Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Rumberg. I'm a managing partner with MetricNet, and I will be your host for today's information briefing on the service desk benchmark for medical care. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining in our briefing today. Now, before we get started, I have just a few administrative announcements to make. We have quite a few people on the call today, so during the presentation, all of you will be in listen-only mode. However, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them in the dialog box that appears in the lower right corner of your screen, and I will answer those questions at the conclusion of the webcast. This presentation will run about 40 to 45 minutes with Q&A. So for those who have other commitments later in the day, I should be wrapped up by about 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States. Now, some of you on the call today have worked with MetricNet before, and many of you have been on our website in the past. But for those who are not familiar with MetricNet, let me give you just a brief introduction. MetricNet's core business is benchmarking. We perform benchmarks for a variety of different industries and functional areas. My role in the company is to manage the service desk, desktop support, and call center benchmarks and client relationships for MetricNet. We've been at this for a long time now, and as a result, we've created the largest, most comprehensive database of service desk, process, and performance indicators in the industry. We've experienced and worked on nearly 3,000 separate service desk benchmarks, and as a result, we've created a global database of process and performance indicators. We track more than 30 KPIs, everything from cost per contact and customer satisfaction to speed of answer and first contact resolution rate. We've also identified and cataloged and created a taxonomy of nearly 80 different industry best practices in everything from support strategy to technology, stakeholder communication, and process and procedure. Now, our clients are companies that you're probably familiar with. In fact, more than half the Fortune 500, half of the largest companies in North America, use MetricNet benchmarks. And these include a significant number of companies in your industry, in the medical care industry. Companies like Sisters of Mercy Healthcare out of St. Louis, Wellstar out of Atlanta, and DaVita out of Denver, Colorado. So right now I'd like to shift gears and talk more specifically about the service desk benchmark for medical care. The question we get quite frequently is, why have we decided to syndicate a benchmark for this particular vertical industry? And there's really two main reasons. The first is that the demand within this industry is huge. When we look at our website traffic and the requests that we get from different companies who are interested in benchmarking their service desk, far and away the largest vertical market is the medical care industry. So there's clearly a need for this. The second thing, and I think you'll appreciate this, being involved in service and support in this industry, is that there are unique characteristics of providing support in this particular vertical market. These include, among other things, the huge variety and wide spectrum of technologies that you support. Everything from handheld devices, tablet computers and smartphones, for example, desktop computers, laptop computers, but also on-site equipment, medical imaging equipment, for example, lab equipment, for example. There's no other vertical market that we're familiar with that is asked to support as broad an array of technologies as the healthcare or medical care industry is. The second big reason is that the customers are broadly distributed geographically. At the very least, you're likely to be located on a campus and to provide support to professionals across a medical campus. But more often than not, the individuals you're supporting are spread across a much larger geographic area, across a city, a state, multiple states, or in some cases, even multiple countries. And this presents unique challenges, as you well know. The third key criteria or key factor is this. The service levels are more critical in this business than they are in any other. If we look at retail banking, for example, or financial services, or hospitality, or any other manufacturing industry, for example, the service levels are not as critical in those industries as they are when you're providing support in this industry, particularly if you're providing support for medical care professionals such as doctors and nurses. So when we put it all together, between the industry demand and the unique characteristics of providing service and support in this vertical market, it simply made sense to syndicate the benchmark rather than continue to do these as one-off benchmarks for healthcare companies that come to MetricNet or medical care companies that come to MetricNet and say that they want to benchmark the service desk. We simply decided to syndicate it, get a large number of companies to participate, and drive down the cost accordingly. Now the project timeline looks like this. We're currently in the sign-up and registration phase. We're near the end of that phase right now. We're in the 5th of 5 information briefings that we are delivering on this benchmark. And I want to make you aware of the fact that there is an early sign-up discount that will end at the end of this month. On the last day of December, the 50% discount will go away. Now, a little bit later in this presentation, I'll talk about the fees for participating in this benchmark, but it is critical to keep in mind that if you want to get the 50% discount, you do need to get registered for this benchmark by the end of the year. Beginning in 2014, we enter the data collection phase, and that will go on for 3 months, January, February, and March of 2014. Everyone's data is due back to MetricNet by March 31st. You can submit it to us earlier than that, but certainly no later than the 31st of March is when your data is due back to MetricNet. And we'll talk about the data collection in a few minutes here. MetricNet will spend the month of April 2014 putting together all of the benchmarking reports for the participating companies. And then in May of 2014, we will be presenting the results of these benchmarks individually to each company that participated in the benchmark. Now, I want to make one point here about the data collection process. Although we have allocated a 3-month time frame for collecting the data, it does not take anywhere near 3 months to collect the data that we are going to need for the benchmark. In fact, our clients tell us that it takes anywhere from about 6 to 8, maybe 10 hours at most to fill out the data collection forms. However, we want to give you enough time to make sure that you can gather appropriate data, that you set aside time to do it properly, and that you feel comfortable and confident in the data that you submit to MetricNet for your service desk benchmark. So we've left the window open for 3 months. It doesn't take anywhere near this long to collect the data, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to make sure that you could do this at your own pace, at your leisure, and to feel confident about the data that you submit to MetricNet for your benchmark. Now this project will unfold in 6 modules. Now, these are not necessarily sequential. Many of these modules take place in parallel or simultaneously. But very briefly, we're going to start by collecting data. Once we have that data, we will conduct a benchmark and a gap analysis for every service desk that participates in the benchmark. We'll create a unique balanced scorecard for each company in the benchmark. We will ask each company to complete a best practices self-assessment. It's a questionnaire that you will fill out. It only takes about an hour to complete the questionnaire. And then we will develop a unique set of recommendations for each company that participates in the benchmark. Finally, we will schedule time to present your results, and we will submit to each participating company a benchmarking report, much like the report that we're looking at right here. It's in PowerPoint format, provides the methodology, the data, the background, the gap analysis, your balanced scorecard, the self-assessment, and the recommendations and strategies for improved performance. Now I want to drill down a little bit and take a look at each one of these 6 modules. Again, keeping in mind that these are not necessarily done sequentially. Many of these modules take place simultaneously, starting with the baselining and the data collection process. Once you sign up for the benchmark, we will set up a time and date to do the project kickoff meeting with your company. This is not a mass kickoff where everybody who's participating in the benchmark will be kicked off at the same time. Rather, it is a kickoff meeting for your individual company so that you can invite the individuals from your company that you would like to participate in the project kickoff meeting. We deliver the kickoff meeting through GoToMeeting, much like the interface that you're on right now. The goal is to introduce MetricNet to your company, discuss the project schedule, talk a little bit about the data collection document, and answer any questions that you might have about the project. Then we're going to ask you to complete 2 data collection questionnaires. I'm going to shift screens here and show you what those data collection questionnaires look like. They are both in Excel format, as you can see here. This is the main data collection questionnaire for the service desk benchmark. The first tab, we ask you for some general information: who's filling out the questionnaire, where is the service desk located, what are your hours of operation, how many individuals do you support, and so on. We then ask you to provide information on your workload profile. What's your average monthly contact volume, for example, in the voice channel, the voicemail channel, the email channel, fax, web chat channel, and so on and so forth. We ask about your annual spending, broken down into the categories that you can see here. What is your annual spending for the service desk, and how does it break down between technician salaries and benefits, indirect or management salaries and benefits, facilities expense, technology expense, and so on and so forth. Now, we recognize that not everybody is going to have their service desk budget broken down into these nice, neat categories. We simply ask you to provide this information on a best efforts basis. We do know that oftentimes some estimation goes into providing this data. Now, if you have outsourced your service desk, you would fill out this tab, the pricing tab, and we simply ask you, how much do you pay your outsource for any given period of time, for a month, a quarter, or 1 year, for example. If you're spending $5 million a year on your outsourcer, you would simply indicate $5 million up here and indicate that that is for a 1-year period of time. We then ask you about your head count. Now, we've broken the head count down into these generic categories: technician level 1, level 2, level 3, other technicians, supervisors and team leads, managers, and so on. Your titles are likely to be different, but using these generic categories, we want you to show us what your head count is for both company employees as well as any contractors that you have working on your service desk. Then we get to the operational performance. We're going to ask you questions about customer satisfaction, technician turnover, speed of answer, and other service levels. We'll ask you questions about your inbound and outbound handle time, your first level and your first contact resolution rates. And again, I want to emphasize that we don't expect you to be able to provide 100% of this data. In fact, when we get these data collection questionnaires back from our clients, they're usually only about 60 or 70% complete. We just want you to answer this questionnaire to the best of your ability, and whatever data that you're able to provide, we will be able to benchmark you against that data. Then we get to a tab called Other Performance Metrics, and for any other metrics you track, we'd be interested in hearing what those are and what your performance is vis-a-vis that metric, and also your definition of that metric. And if we happen to have any data in our database for that particular metric, we'll provide it in your benchmarking report for you. We then ask you to tell us about the technology that you use in your service desk. What is your trouble ticket system, for example? What kind of an ACD do you use? Do you have a knowledge management system, and so on? And then compensation. Now, this is an optional tab. You don't have to provide this information. It doesn't get fed back in your benchmarking report. So for most companies, compensation is a very sensitive topic. It's a proprietary set of information. And if you feel uncomfortable providing this data, you don't need to, but rest assured, the data will not show up in your benchmarking report. Now, the reason we ask for it is because when we're doing a benchmark and we need to diagnose what's going on with cost per contact, if there's a gap in cost per contact, it is usually driven by one of 3 factors. One of those 3 factors would be the salary rates. If you're significantly above the peer group average on salary, your cost per contact is likely to be higher because this is a labor-intensive function. By contrast, if your salaries are significantly below those of the peer group, then your cost per contact is likely to be below that of the peer group average. There are other things that can drive differences in cost per contact, such as the technician utilization rate and also the ratio of technicians to total head count, but salary is one of the big ones. And again, we ask you to fill this out, but it is an optional tab. And then any additional information that you can provide. For example, if you have workflow diagrams, service level agreements, operating level agreements, anything like that that you can provide to us, it simply gives us more context, more background, more information on your service desk, and it allows us to develop a more complete and comprehensive benchmark for you. Now, the second questionnaire you will be filling out is what I call the process self-assessment. It's pretty straightforward. There are 72 questions in here, and you simply answer each one of these questions with a number 1 through 5. So if we read, for example, this first question, the service desk has a well-defined mission, vision, and strategy. The vision and strategy are well documented and communicated to key stakeholders in the organization. Now, if you've never even thought of this, you give yourself a ranking of a 1. By contrast, if you've been doing it and you've been doing it well for a while, you might give yourself a 4. Whoops. You might give yourself a 4. By contrast, if you're doing it and you've been doing it for a while and it's embedded in the organization and the culture, you might give yourself a 5. So again, this is a self-assessment, but the reason it's important, as you'll see a little bit later in this discussion, is that process drives performance. And if you're trying to improve your performance, you've got to look at the underlying processes and what you can do to those processes in order to improve your performance over time. So this is the second of 2 questionnaires that we will ask you to complete. As I mentioned a few moments ago, the data collection process on average takes anywhere from 6 to 8, maybe 10 hours at most. Okay, let's move on. We've talked about data collection. Let's now talk about the benchmark and the gap analysis. Now, the first chart I want to show here is a diagram that explains what benchmarking is. Now, I suspect that all of you, because you're on this call, know exactly what benchmarking is. Nevertheless, let me just briefly define it for you. Benchmarking involves comparing your service desk performance to that of a comparable peer group. Comparable meaning same vertical industry, which is why we've chosen to do this benchmark, syndicate this benchmark for the medical care industry. The bigger part of benchmarking, though, is not so much the comparison, but rather the analysis. That is, to the extent that your data differs from the benchmarking peer group, you want to understand why, because you want to be able to perpetuate positive performance gaps, and you want to be able to mitigate and eliminate negative performance gaps. So the second and more important piece of benchmarking is the diagnosis that MetricNet will conduct on your benchmarking data. Now, based on that, you can selectively emulate what the better performers in this peer group are doing. You can adopt and adapt what they are doing so that you can improve your performance, whether that means a higher customer satisfaction, a higher first contact resolution rate, a higher first level resolution rate, a lower cost per contact, a lower cost per minute of handle time, whatever it might be. Benchmarking gives you the power to sort of bypass the incrementalism and the trial and error that typifies most improvement initiatives and build upon the proven best practices of the industry's superior performers. That's the real value of benchmarking, is that you don't have to improve at an evolutionary pace. You can build on the proven best practices of the peer group in this benchmark and improve your performance at a revolutionary pace. Now, the metrics that are shown on this page, there are about 25 of them, are those that we will use in the benchmark. We've organized them into the 6 categories, as you can see. We've got cost metrics, quality metrics, productivity metrics, technician metrics, service level metrics, and call handling metrics. Now, we've organized them into these categories to help us do the benchmarking gap analysis. You can see that under each one of the categories, we've got a number of different metrics. If you are managing your service desk in-house, you will have these 2 cost metrics in your benchmark. If you have outsourced your service desk, you're going to have these 2 price metrics in your benchmark because you pay a price. You don't have an internal cost per se. And if you've got a hybrid desk where some of it is managed in-house and some of it is outsourced, you will have both cost and price metrics included in your benchmark. Now, again, the reason we look at so many different metrics is that we want to be able to do a comprehensive and thorough gap analysis. We want to get a 360-degree view of your service desk. So anytime we identify a performance gap, we can explain why that gap exists. So these are the KPIs that will be included in the benchmark. And what I'm going to do in the next several pages is give you some samples of the output that you can expect to see in your benchmarking report, beginning here on page 17. This is a tabular result. In other words, a table that shows some key statistics. Now, first of all, we have the different categories of metrics listed over here in the left-hand column. Then we've got the KPIs themselves listed in the second column from the left. These are the same KPIs we just looked at. Your company, we'll just call it XYZ for the sake of this presentation. Your data would then be shown in the third column from the left. And then for the peer group, the companies that participate in this benchmark, we're going to show some statistics. What is their average performance? What is the minimum in the peer group? The median, meaning half above, half below, different than the arithmetic average. And what is the maximum performance? Now, many people relate well to this particular chart. People that love looking at data and love looking at numbers are very comfortable with this chart. But even if you spend a good amount of time looking at it, it's sometimes difficult to absorb all of this information. So rest assured that we are going to present this very same data in a variety of different formats. We're going to present it in graphical format, quartile format. We're going to be creating a balanced scorecard for each company that participates in the benchmark. And let me show you just a few of those outputs. These are quartile charts, the same metrics that are shown on page 16 and 17. In addition to presenting them in an overall summary table, as I've shown here on page 17, we will also show you which quartile you land in. So for this particular company, XYZ, we can see that their cost per contact at $8.42 is in the top quartile, which is the best quartile. You can see that their inbound contacts per technician per month at 910 contacts is also in the top quartile. But we also see that the technicians divided by total headcount in the service desk is at the low end at 79%. They are in the fourth quartile. So this is just another way of displaying the data. It gives you a quartile ranking for each of the 25-plus KPIs that are included in the benchmark. Some people love these quartile charts. Some people don't relate to them as well. But again, in the interest of presenting the data in a variety of different formats so that you can communicate it easily and so that it's easier to absorb, we present it in these various formats, including graphical format, as I've shown here. Now, this is on page 19, a single metric, in this particular case, customer satisfaction. Company XYZ, again, our hypothetical company is always shown as the orange bar here. The other blue bars represent the other companies that are in this benchmark. The average is always shown as the dashed red line going across here. You can see that the average customer satisfaction was a little bit more than 78%. The low was 63.1%. That was company number 20. And the high was over 96%. You can see that company number 21. And by the way, you're going to know exactly which data is yours, but you're not going to know which company is number 17, which company is number 1, which company is number 14. You will have in your benchmarking report a list of the companies that participated, but we are not going to tell you, for example, who company number 2 is, who company number 17 is. You will, of course, know your own company number so that you can identify it in all of these graphs and charts. Now, we are also going to show you how your service desk stacks up relative to all of the other service desks in this benchmark. We're going to put you on a two-dimensional chart where cost is shown on the x-axis, quality as measured by customer satisfaction is shown on the y-axis. And by the way, this is normalized cost, meaning cost per contact. Now, ideally, you want to be in this upper right-hand quadrant. This is where you are both low cost and high quality. That's kind of the holy grail of any service and support organization, whether you're a level 1 service desk or a desktop support organization. Being in this upper right-hand quadrant, meaning low cost, high quality, is ultimately where you want to be. For those that end up in this lower right quadrant, it says that your costs are in check, but you need to improve your quality over time because your quality is low. If you're in this upper left-hand quadrant, it says that your quality is good as measured by customer satisfaction, but your costs are high. And over time, our recommendations are going to tell you how you can reduce your cost over time. If you're in this lower left-hand quadrant, it says that you have both high cost and low quality, and our recommendations in your benchmark will be geared towards helping you move up and to the right so that you can, over time, reduce cost and improve the quality of support that you deliver to your end users. Let's talk now about the balanced scorecard. I've referenced this a couple of times. And what I've shown here is the scorecard, an example of a scorecard that we are going to create uniquely for your service desk. You can see that we've got 6 performance indicators included in the scorecard. We've got cost metrics, quality metrics, technician productivity metrics, call handling metrics. We've got a technician job satisfaction metric, and we've got a service level metric. Now, you may not have all of these metrics. That's okay. If you're missing a metric like technician job satisfaction, only about 50% of all service desks track this metric. What we do when we construct your scorecard is that we substitute the peer group average when we're building your scorecard. I'll explain that further in just a few minutes. But the first step in the scorecard is to select the metrics to be included in the scorecard. These are among those that we believe to be the most important for a level 1 service desk. We then weight them according to their importance. Now, this is a judgment call on MetricNet's part, but we overweight cost and customer satisfaction because those, being the foundation metrics, are the 2 most important KPIs. Then in the benchmark, we record the worst performance for each one of these metrics, and it's not necessarily the same company that has the worst performance. In fact, it almost never is, but we would show the highest cost per contact here, the worst customer satisfaction here, the lowest technician utilization here, and so on. And on the next column, 4th column from the left, we're going to show the best case performance from the benchmark. So the lowest cost per contact, the highest customer satisfaction, the highest technician utilization, and so on. Then for your scorecard, we're going to put your data in this column, 3rd column from the right, and we calculate a metric score using this simple interpolation formula. It's worst case minus your actual performance. That's the numerator. The denominator is the range, worst case minus best case. You're going to end up with a number between 0 and 100%. You'll be at 0 if you have the worst case performance in the benchmark. In this particular case, 57.6% first contact resolution rate was the worst in the benchmark. And you will be at 100% if you have the best performance in the benchmark. In this case, 99% for technician job satisfaction represents the best case in the benchmark. Most of your metrics are going to be somewhere between 0 and 100%. The final step in constructing the scorecard is to multiply the metric score by the metric weighting to come up with a balanced score for each metric in the scorecard. And when we add all these together, we come up with a single overall metric. Now, the value of this is that it enables us to compare you against all the other service desks in the benchmark. What I'm showing here is a distribution of scorecard data for the roughly 25 companies in this particular benchmark. Here again is our hypothetical participant, company XYZ. You can see that the scores range from 31.6% on the scorecard, company number 4, all the way up to more than 63% on the scorecard for company number 6. Our hypothetical participant here had a score of 62.1%. Here it is right there, 62.1%. So what we've done is we've aggregated a series of disparate metrics, and we've normalized them. We've come up with a single overall score for each participating service desk in this benchmark, and then we've displayed them in this graphical format so that you can see exactly how you compare to the other companies that participated in this benchmark. And again, we've rolled together cost metrics, quality metrics, productivity metrics, service level metrics, agent metrics, and the like, and we've aggregated them into a single overall indicator of your service desk performance. So this enables us, this will be one of the more important slides in your benchmarking report, this enables us to show how you compare to the other companies that participate in this benchmark. Also, as one of your deliverables by participating in the benchmark, you will receive the Excel spreadsheet that contains your scorecard, and that will enable you to keep your scorecard updated. If you want to update it once a month or once a quarter, you can do that. Shown here is data from a client of MetricNet's from last year where they adopted the scorecard, they updated it every single month, and you can see that over time their scorecard went up, which is a good thing. If the number's going up over time, that's a positive thing. The purple background here represents the trailing 12-month average. By contrast, if these bars were going down, if the score was getting lower each month or each quarter, that would not be a good thing. Ideally, you want this graph to be trending upwards because that tells you that overall your service desk is improving with time. When you balance all the factors together, cost, quality, productivity, call handling, technician, and service level metrics. Okay, let's talk now about this process self-assessment. I showed you the questionnaire a few minutes earlier at the beginning of this presentation. Let me explain it in a little bit more detail. We're going to ask you a series of 72 questions related to your service desk strategy, human resource management, processes, technology, performance measurement, and stakeholder communication. And for each of those 72 questions, we're going to ask you to give yourself a ranking. A ranking of 1 says that you have no knowledge of that particular practice. At the other extreme, a ranking of 5 says that you understand the best practice and you believe that you're applying it in a world-class fashion. Let me show you an example of one page out of the questionnaire. We ask you a question, you give yourself a ranking. And every company in this benchmark is going to do the same thing. And on this particular chart, you're seeing how your score would compare to other companies in this benchmark. Now, when we roll these together, we can look at, for the 6 categories I just went through, strategy, human resources, process, technology, performance measurement, and stakeholder communication. The blue bar would represent your company. The purple bars represent the peer group average of all the companies that participate in this benchmark. So you can see that when it comes to your maturity on service and support strategy, you're at about par with the benchmarking peer group. By contrast, for human resources, you're way ahead of the benchmarking peer group. For process, you're a little bit above average. For technology, you're above average. You're way above average on performance measurement, and you're a little bit below average when it comes to stakeholder communication. Now, we can also plot this out and show you what your overall score looks like. The total possible score would be 360. You take 72 questions. If you gave yourself a ranking of 5 on every single question, you'd end up with a score of 360. Now, we consider a world-class score to be an average score of 4 or above on every single one of the 72 questions. Now, some questions you might have a 2 or a 3, but if those are balanced out by some 5s, and on average you have a score of 4.0 on all of these 72 questions, then you're going to end up above this green line up here, which is the line that we consider to be world-class process maturity. Now, for this particular chart, you can see that the average score was about 179 points. That's this dashed red line here. Our company, XYZ, the orange bar right here, scored 217.5. So what this chart is going to enable you to do is see how mature your processes are relative to the benchmarking peer group that you're compared against in this particular vertical benchmark. The other thing we do is we put you on a 2-dimensional chart where we show your process assessment score on the x-axis and your balance score on the y-axis. We went through the balance scorecard about 5 minutes ago, and I showed you how that was computed. You may recall that the score was 62.1%. For this particular process assessment, we calculated a score of 217.5. When we put that on a 2-dimensional chart, as we've done here, you can see where you would end up relative to the other data points that are shown here. Now, one of the key things I want you to take away from this particular chart is that there's clearly a cause and effect relationship here. Process drives performance. I mentioned that much earlier in this presentation. And the more mature your processes are, the higher your balanced scorecard tends to be. So what we're trying to reinforce here is the notion that process and performance are inextricably related to each other. The more mature your processes are, the higher your balanced scorecard is likely to be. And you can see that pattern shown here. There's some variation, of course, or variability as they call it, around the mean. But generally you can see the trend here, and it's not just a spurious trend, it is a cause and effect relationship. Process maturity driving overall performance is measured by the balanced scorecard. Okay, let's move ahead and talk about the recommendations that we'll be developing for each service desk that participates in this benchmark. The recommendations tend to fall into the 5 categories, just like we were looking at in this section here on the process self-assessment. The recommendations we develop are going to follow those same 6 categories. There will be recommendations around service and support strategy, human resource management, your day-to-day call handling processes and procedures, your technology, your performance measurement and management, and what we call, again, stakeholder communication. So the recommendations will fall into those 6 categories, and they could be very tactical in nature. For example, a tactical recommendation in human resource management might say, your first contact resolution rate is low. We think it may make sense to develop a training module, maybe 4 hours or 8 hours, on the importance of FCR and how your agents and technicians can improve the first contact resolution rate, because FCR is what drives customer satisfaction. By contrast, there might be a strategic recommendation. For example, if we find that your price per contact, let's say you've outsourced your service desk, your price per contact is $50 per contact, and we know from having benchmarked other outsourced service desks before that you should be able to get the same thing for about $30 per contact, or that if you take it in-house, you can do it for about $15 a contact. We're going to tell you that. We're going to say, look, I think you're paying too much for this, and there are 2 ways you can reduce the cost, or 3 ways. You can renegotiate with your current supplier and get down from this, outrageous $50 per contact cost, or you can go to a different supplier and get somewhere around $25 to $30 per contact, or you can insource it and get your cost down to about $15 per contact. That would be an example of a strategic recommendation. So the recommendations will be strategic to along a spectrum from tactical to strategic, and they will fall into these 6 categories as I've shown. We will also establish performance goals for each company participating in the benchmark. Now, these are just hypothetical, and your performance goals are going to look different than this. It really depends upon where you need to have a goal established. This particular company was not doing well on FCR, first contact resolution rate, so we established a goal for them there. They were not tracking first level resolution rate, so we suggested that they start tracking it. We explained how to track it, and we established a performance target from them. And of course, if you substitute these performance metrics into your scorecard, it's going to change your scorecard, and we want to be able to show on a pro forma basis for each company participating in the benchmark how their service desk balance scorecard will change and improve if they are able to achieve these performance targets. So again, each company in the benchmark will also receive a customized set of benchmarking or just performance targets. The final step in this process is to develop the report that we will create for each company. These are individualized reports. This is not some mass report we're going to create and distribute the same report to everybody. We create individual customized reports for each company that participates in this benchmark. We then schedule a time to present these results, regardless of where you are overseas or in North America, Latin America, any place else. We're going to establish a time, and we will set up a go-to meeting, much like we're going through right now, to present the results of your unique benchmark. Now, the deliverables for this benchmark include the project schedule, which I went through very early on in this presentation, and I will go through again in a few minutes here. The data collection questionnaires, there are 2 of them, one for the core data collection, the other one for the process self-assessment. There will be a custom kickoff meeting for your company. The benchmarking report, very comprehensive in scope, about 200 pages long, will start with an overview of the project as well as the objectives, some background on the industry and how service and support is becoming a more strategic activity within the IT value chain. We will provide your benchmarking summary. In other words, we kind of boil it down to about 20 of the most important pages. For the busy reader that just wants to know what the results are, they will be contained in these 20 or so pages. The balanced scorecard, the best practices process assessment, your conclusions and recommendations, and then finally what we call detailed benchmarking data. You remember the bar chart I showed earlier, actually two of them, one for the balanced scorecard and one for customer satisfaction. Every one of the 20-plus key performance indicators included in the benchmark will be graphed out so you can see the complete distribution of data for every one of the KPIs, and that will be included at the back end of the report. And then finally, we'll schedule a time to present your results, and we'll do those through GoToMeeting. You'll have an open mic so you can ask questions as we go through the presentation. Now, in terms of the project fees, between now and December 31st, in other words, you have until the end of the year to get this benchmark at half price. If you have a single service desk that wants to participate, the price is $7,500. If you want to do two benchmarks, and many of the companies that are participating do have two or more service desks, the price would be $12,500. And if you have more than two service desks that are interested in participating, let us know. We've got a discounted price schedule that we can share with you. Now, you can purchase this benchmark on our website directly and pay for it with a credit card. Again, by December 31st, this is the price. Or you can provide us with a PO number. If you get that to us by December 31st, you will also get the discounted price. But after the 1st of Jan 2014, the price doubles. It goes to $15,000 for one benchmark and $25,000 for two benchmarks. Now, in terms of next steps, to the extent that you want to learn more about this benchmark, you're of course welcome to contact us directly. You can send us an email at info@metricnet.com. You will also find information on our webpage for the medical care benchmark. We provided a link in today's presentation which will be sent out to all of you that you can click to get more information about the medical care benchmark. You can also look at the FAQs and sample deliverables on this page, and I'll go to this page in a few minutes and show you. And of course, most important, we want you to sign up for this benchmark. Now, I'm going to go to the actual web page to show you what that looks like so you know exactly what that. There's the landing page for the service desk benchmark for medical care. You can see that there is an FAQ sheet that you can download and take a look at the FAQ sheet. You can also, if you choose to do so, download the sample deliverables. So if you want to take a look at the benchmarking report, you can see that it's organized into these categories. It's going to be roughly 180 to 200 pages long, depending upon the extent of the recommendations that we develop for your service desk. And then you can purchase and pay for your benchmark here as well. This will take you to the landing page for ordering the benchmark. Just put in the number of benchmarks you want to purchase, add that to your cart. That's going to take you to a checkout page. You're going to see that $7,500 until the end of the year, and then after the 1st of January 2014, that price goes up to $15,000. So again, this is one way that you can purchase the benchmark. You can also provide us with a purchase order number, and as I said, if you give us that PO number by the 31st of December, you will qualify for the 50% discount. Let me go back now to the presentation. I want to remind you one last time about the timeline, and then we're going to get into a Q&A here. Keep in mind that this is the last of the information briefings we will be delivering in 2013. We're closing out the sign-up and registration phase right now. The early sign-up discount will end at the end of this month, and then the price doubles on January 1st. Data collection will take place during the months of January, February, March, which means that you will need to complete the 2 data collection questionnaires sometime by the 31st of March. You can get them to us earlier if you want to. The benchmarking report will be produced by MetricNet in April of 2014, and then finally we will schedule your presentation of results to take place in May of 2014. Okay, with that, I'm going to look at the questions that we've got queued up here. And if you do have questions, please type them in the dialog box that appears in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Let me just open that up. Okay. Okay, first question here asks, our service desk is outsourced. Can we still participate? The answer is yes. In the data collection questionnaire that I showed you early on in this presentation, you will see that for the cost data, you can complete the cost tab. Let me look at that. So if your service desk is insourced, you will complete this tab. If you are outsourced, you will complete this tab, the pricing tab. If you are both insourced and outsourced, meaning some hybrid model where you've outsourced part of your service desk and the rest of it is insourced, you will complete both of those. So yes, there is an option if you are outsourced or insourced, or if you have some hybrid service desk, you can participate. Okay, next question, when does the benchmark begin? The benchmark has already started. We're finishing up right now with the sign-up and registration phase. Data collection begins in 2014, and then the benchmarking report is produced in April. Presentations will happen in May. Okay, next question, who can participate in MetricNet's service desk benchmark for medical care facilities? Any organization that operates a service desk in the medical care industry can participate in this benchmark. This includes service desks of all sizes and from all geographies that are both insourced and outsourced. Okay, next question. We have 2 help desks. One supports our, sorry, I can't quite read this. The window is very small. One supports our internal corporate customers, and the other supports our network of 22 hospitals. Can both of these help desks participate in the benchmark? The answer is yes, they can. The 2 desks are likely to have different performance characteristics because supporting a hospital or urgent care or clinical environment is different than supporting a corporate environment. So we're going to split out the peer groups, one for service desks that support clinical and one for service desks that support corporate. Okay, next question is, can we purchase the benchmarking report if we don't submit data? Yes, you can, but let me qualify that. At MetricNet, we get paid in data and dollars. So if you want to purchase the benchmarking report without submitting any benchmarking data, you can do that, but the price goes up. Specifically, you will pay double what those who submit data are paying. So instead of paying $7,500 for your benchmark, if you sign up by the 31st of December, you're going to pay $15,000 for the benchmark. Okay, next question is, what will I receive by participating in MetricNet's service desk benchmark for medical care facilities? We went through the deliverables a few moments ago. You have the project participation kit, the project kickoff meeting, the comprehensive benchmarking report, 7 major sections in that report, and then the live webcast presentation of results. Okay, next question is, how does the data collection process work? Okay, the answer is this. Each participating service desk will be asked to provide their service desk data in 2 Excel spreadsheets. And during the kickoff meeting with your company, we're going to discuss the data collection document with you. Perhaps more importantly, the completed data collection questionnaires will be reviewed with each service desk to ensure accuracy and to discuss any data that appears to be inaccurate or inconsistent. Okay, next question. We don't have all of the data requested in the data collection spreadsheet. Can we still participate? I think I addressed this in the presentation, but I'll answer it again. Yes, of course. We don't expect anyone to have 100% of the data that we ask for. We simply ask you to complete the data collection questionnaire on a best efforts basis. The bare minimum data that we need for you to participate would be your head count, your contact volume, and your annual spending level, whether that's an in-source service desk or an outsourced service desk. We need that basic information in order to do even a rudimentary benchmark. But the more data that you can provide, the more comprehensive and the more credible your complete benchmark will be. Next question. Will we know who the other companies in the benchmark are? Yes, but you're not going to know which data goes with which company. So although you'll know who the other healthcare companies in the benchmark are, the results are completely anonymous. So you'll not know which data goes with which company. You'll know, for example, that company number 15 got the highest score on the balanced scorecard, that company number 33 got the lowest score on the balanced scorecard. But you're not going to know who companies 15 and 33 are unless, of course, you're either company 15 or company 33. How long will it take to fill out the data collection spreadsheet? And that's the next question. I think I answered this, but I'll do it again. The time required to gather, assemble, and submit your service desk data really depends upon the accessibility of your data and the experience levels of the people responsible for gathering and submitting your service desk data. We strongly suggest that data collection be assigned to someone in your organization who's very familiar with your service desk and who has access to all of the relevant service desk reports and data sources. Now, the time required for you to gather and submit your service desk data does vary depending upon those factors, but those who've participated in our benchmarks in the past have reported that it takes anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to complete the data collection worksheet. Okay, next question here. What's the due date for the data collection questionnaire? I answered that also. To participate in the service desk benchmark for medical care, you will need to submit your completed service desk data collection questionnaires to MetricNet by March 31st, 2014. You can get it to us before that, of course, but the absolute drop-dead date for the data collection document is March 31st of 2014. Okay, next question. What are the fees to participate in the benchmark? Okay, I answered that up here. Our service desk benchmark for medical care is priced at $7,500 for one benchmark, and this is U.S. currency, U.S. dollars, that is. And for two benchmarks, it's $12,500, provided that you register and pay for the benchmark by December 31st, 2013. Now, for those with more than two service desks participating in the benchmark, I would ask you to contact us, and we can give you the complete pricing schedule for 3 or more benchmarks. Now, the price per benchmark continues to drop, and you will receive a significant price break each time you add another benchmark to the scope. Keep in mind, though, that beginning January 1, 2014, the participation fees double to $15,000 for one benchmark and $25,000 for two benchmarks. The final question, unless anybody else types another question in, and please do so if you have any other questions. But the final question that we've got in our dialog box is this. If we sign up today, can we start on the data collection questionnaire? The answer is absolutely. You can start on the data collection questionnaire right away. As soon as you sign up for the benchmark, which means that you either provide us with a PO number or you purchase the benchmark on our website, we'll send you the data collection documents. We'll get in touch with you to schedule your project kickoff meeting. Okay, it looks like we have addressed all of the questions that appeared in the question dialog box. If you have any others, please type them in now. I want to thank all of you for participating in our briefing today. I do hope that each of you makes a decision to participate in MetricNet's Service Desk Benchmark for Medical Care. Please be sure to sign up by the end of the year to receive your 50% discount. This concludes our information briefing. Thank you once again. Goodbye now, and happy holidays to all of you.